There is a sacred space hidden not in some distant temple, but within the very depths of the human soul. When Jesus says, "The kingdom of God is within you," he is not speaking metaphorically. He is pointing to a divine truth that has been veiled beneath layers of doctrine, ritual, and fear. This truth, guarded by silence and mystery, is that the soul itself is a living sanctuary, an inner temple where the divine presence eternally dwells. But to enter this temple is no easy task. It requires not belief, but experience. Not passive worship, but conscious inner awakening. The inner temple cannot be accessed by external means. It is veiled behind ego, shadow, and illusion. It is a sacred architecture built not by hands but by trance, brick by brick, through suffering, surrender, and spiritual fire. In Gnostic thought, the soul's journey is often described as a descent into forgetfulness and a return to remembrance. The inner temple represents that point of sacred memory. When the soul remembers its origin, its true nature, and its eternal union with the source. The outer world distracts us with noise and sensation, but the inner temple is entered in stillness. It does not shout, it whispers. It does not demand, it invites. But only those with eyes to see and ears to hear can respond. The door to this temple is hidden, like the pearl in the field, like treasure buried in a forgotten place. It is found only by those who are willing to lose everything to find it. In Hermetic teachings, the adage, "so's above, as above, so without," reflects this mystical symmetry. The inner temple mirrors the heavenly temple. To build the inner temple is to align the microcosm with the macrocosm, the human soul with the divine mind. The tabernacle Moses was instructed to build in the wilderness was but a shadow of the real temple, the one within the heart. And yet, how many seek God outside themselves, in buildings, in hieroglyphs, in doctrines, while neglecting the temple of their own being? The inner temple cannot be entered while the soul clings to division, judgment, or fear. It is a holy space, and only purity, humility, and love can pass its threshold. To enter the inner temple is to pass through the veils. The first veil is the body, our attachments to pleasure, pain, identity, and form. The second is the mind, its thoughts, beliefs, fears, and the third is the heart, wounded, guarded, longing, and often closed. Each veil must be lifted through inner work, contemplation, and grace. In Eastern philosophy, especially in the Upanishads, the self is described as hidden, like a flame within the lotus of the heart. This flame is the Atman, the divine spark that is not different from Brahman, the infinite. The inner temple is the seat of that flame. But the ego, like a thick curtain, conceals it. Only through the dissolution of ego can the light within be revealed. The early desert fathers understood this. They withdrew not just from the world, but from noise within. They entered the spiritual desert to face the beasts of their own unconscious. The pride, the anger, the lust, the despair. The battle was inward. Their cells were not just places of solitude, but altars. Their tears were not of weakness, but of purification. This is the way of the mystic, the soul's pilgrimage into the hidden sanctuary where God waits in silence. In esoteric Christianity, the Holy of Holies is not in a temple made of stone, but in the silence behind thought, the emptiness behind self. It is here that the soul meets God not as other, but as origin. To build the inner temple is to live intentionally, to act with reverence, to speak with wisdom, to love without attachment, and to seek without seizing. It is not an event. Each is a life, each emotion a window, each choice a pillar. We are always building, either toward truth or illusion. And what is the cornerstone of this temple? It is stillness. In the stillness, the voice of the divine is heard, not the voice of words, but of knowing. This knowing is what Gnostics called gnosis, the direct experience of the infinite. It cannot be taught, only revealed. In the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, the divine Krishna tells Arjuna to abandon all duties and come to him alone. This is not a rejection of worldly responsibilities, but an invitation to the inner temple, where the soul can rest in union with the Supreme. Arjuna's chariot becomes the symbol of the body, the reins the mind, the charioteer the soul. The inner battlefield is the psyche itself, and victory comes not through force, but through surrender. The inner temple is not won by power, but by relinquishment. In Taoist wisdom, the Tao is described as formless, silent, ever-present. It cannot be grasped, only followed. The Tao that can be spoken is not the eternal Tao. The inner temple is the same. It disappears the moment we try to own it. It remains only for those who are willing to become nothing. The sage empties himself to be filled with the Tao, just as the mystic empties herself to be filled with God. The inner temple is not a place, it is a condition of emptiness, openness and radical presence. Even in modern psychology, the idea of the true self buried beneath layers of conditioning and trauma echoes these ancient truths. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of integrating the process and becoming whole. This process is not unlike the construction of the inner temple. The shadow must be faced, the wounds healed, the inner child embraced. Only then can the self emerge, not the egoic self, but the deep, radiant self that has always been one with the source. In the Kabbalistic tradition, the tree of life is a map of consciousness leading from the outer world, Malkuth, to the divine crown, Keter. Each sephirah is a chamber in the inner temple, and the journey upward is the ascent of the soul through increasing degrees of divine realization. The temple is not static. It is alive, unfolding, and dynamic. It responds to intention, prayer, silence, and love. Every step toward inner alignment opens another door. Every act of forgiveness, every moment of surrender, every breath of awareness brings us closer to the Holy of Holies within. The greatest tragedy is not sin. It is forgetfulness. Forgetting that the inner temple exists. Forgetting that we are more than flesh and bone. Forgetting that within the depths of our being is a living altar where God has never ceased to dwell. The mystics of all traditions, Christian, Sufi, Buddhist, Hindu, point to the same place Hindu. The temple is within. The light is within. The kingdom is within. But it must be uncovered. It must be reclaimed. It must be remembered. Entering the inner temple is the greatest act of rebellion in a world addicted to surfaces. It is the refusal to live on autopilot. It is the sacred west to silence, slowness, and surrender. And once the temple is entered, nothing remains the same. Because within that temple, in that chamber of the soul, burns a fire that cannot be extinguished. The eternal flame of the divine, waiting, always waiting, for the soul to return home. But to remain in the inner temple is a task even greater than entering it. The soul may glimpse the divine light once, but unless it commits to a life of inner devotion, that vision will fade, that drew upon waking. The temple demands presence, not once, not sometimes, but constantly. It asks the soul to walk not in grand gestures, but in sacred stillness. In every breath, every thought, every act, the seeker must remain aligned with the divine. And this is no easy task in a world that praises distraction and worships noise. The temple within is quiet, and so the seeker must become quiet. The tevthin is pure, and so the seeker must be purified. The temple within is timeless, and so the seeker must abandon all urgency, all striving, all fear of death. The ancient Sufi mystic spoke of the beloved, who resides in the heart of the lover. But to meet the beloved, one must remove every barrier, every veil, every trace of self that separates souls. Rumi said, "You were born with wings, why prefer to crawl through life?" The inner temple is where those wings are remembered, unfolded, and used to soar into union with the divine. But the ego fights this. It prefers the comfort of the familiar. It fears the silence because in silence it begins to disappear. And so, the path to the temple is marked by trials. Not as punishment, but as sacred fire that burns away the false. The fire that guards the entrance to the inner temple is not external, it is internal. It is the burning of desire, of pride, of the need to control. This fire does not destroy, it transforms. Like gold in the furnace, the soul must be refined. It must endure the loneliness of unlearning, the pain of inner confrontation, the humility of surrender. But for those who persist, the reward is beyond comprehension. Not in the sense of gaining something new, but in realizing something eternal, that you were never separate from God, you only forgot. In Christian mysticism, the image of the veil torn in the temple when Christ died is not just historical, it is symbolic. The veil that separated humanity from the divine presence was torn in two. This means that the Holy of Holies, once hidden behind ritual and priesthood, is now open to all, but only those who enter with reverence and inner readiness. This veil still exists today, not in temples, but in our own hearts. And it is torn when we surrender our false identities and approach the altar with nothing but love. The true seeker is one who turns inward not once, but daily. who builds the altar heart with devotion, who sweeps the floor of the mind with prayer, who tends the flame of the soul with silence. This is not religion in its institutional form. It is religion in its original meaning, to bind again, to bind at the source. The inner temple is not exclusive. It is open to all who dare to walk the path of authenticity, honesty, and sacred vulnerability. And yet, this path will often make you feel alone, for few walk it. The world will not understand. Even other spiritual seekers may not understand, for many prefer outer rituals to inner transformation. But you were not born to fit in. You were born to remember. And the remembering happens in the quiet sanctuary within, where the soul meets God face to face. You will not need to explain this to anyone. The radiance of your being will say it all. Those who have touched the divine leave traces, not of noise but of peace, not of power but of presence, not of words but of light. The Bhagavad Gita speaks of the yogi who renounces the fruits of action, who dwells in the self, and who sees God in all beings. This is the soul who has entered the inner temple and made it her dwelling place. She does not need to escape the world, because she carries the temple with her. Every step she takes is prayer. Every breath is sacred. Every silence is communion. This is the fullness of life. Not to escape suffering, but to see the divine even within suffering. Not to reject the world, but to walk through it as a living sanctuary. The Taoist sage walks the invisible path. He does not argue with the world. He flows. He does not seek to be known. He becomes invisible so the way may be visible through him. This is the way of the inner temple, to become empty, so that the infinite may dwell within. The more you let go, the more you are filled. The more you forget yourself, the more you remember your essence. And this essence is not weak or passive. It is a divine fire, silent, strong, eternal. Even science now begins to hint at these truths. Quantum physics reveals that the observer shapes reality, that all things are connected beyond space and time. What the mystics have long known, the scientists now glimpse through equations that the universe is not separate from consciousness. It is born of it. The inner temple is the point where matter and spirit converge. It is the sacred zero point, the divine center, the axis mundi that connects the human to the infinite. In Kabbalah, the inner temple is associated with Tiferet, the beauty and balance of the heart where divine mercy and power meet. To dwell in Tiferet is to embody harmony, not by escaping chaos, but by anchoring the soul so deeply in God that nothing can shake it. This is the strength of the mystic, not to control life, but to be still in the center of it. To radiate peace because peace been found at the core. In Neoplatonism, Plotinus writes of the soul's return to the One, the undivided source of all being. But this return is not spatial, it is existential. It is a movement inward, downward, deeper. The One is not found by climbing ladders, but by descending into the sacred cave of the heart. And there, in the silence beyond thought, the soul merges with what it always was, eternal light, undivided, uncreated. This is the mystery of the inner temple. It is not built by effort alone, nor entered by will alone. It is revealed through grace. And grace is not something earned. It is something received when the ego is silent. The inner temple is not a place of striving, but of surrender, not a monument to achievement, but a womb of rebirth. And so, if you hear the call, do not wait. Do not seek permission. Do not ask if you are worthy. You are. The door is open, but you must walk through it. The temple is lit, but you must enter. The divine is waiting, but only in stillness will you hear the invitation. Enter the silence. Close your head and listen, not with your ears, but with your soul. Because the greatest truth is this: the temple was never far. It has always been within you. And the light that burns there, it has never gone there. It is God.